I'm James, just an average guy with a steady job, a 9 to 5, and what I thought was a pretty stable marriage. Emily, my wife, and I had been together for 10 years. For most of those years, we were like any other couple. Good days, bad days, Netflix marathons, and occasional fights about who forgot to take the trash out. But over the past year, Emily had started changing. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just small things. She became more guarded with her phone, started going out more often for girls' nights, and joined this group. She called it the Unity Circle. At first, I didn't think much of it. It sounded like some yoga cult for suburban moms. The thing about Emily? She's good at pretending everything is fine when it's not. She'd smile sweetly and say, "You're just being paranoid," or "It's all in your head, babe." But I knew something wasn't right. Call it gut instinct. Call it 10 years of knowing someone down to their every quirk. Little did I know that gut feeling was about to unravel my entire world. The real shift began 3 months ago when Emily started coming home late. At first, it was a reasonable excuse. The Unity Circle ran over time. You know how Susan loves to talk? But then it became a pattern. Tuesday nights turned into weekends. And then there was the phone, a fortress of secrecy. I'd never had a reason to check it before, but suddenly, she was sleeping with it under her pillow like it was made of gold. One night, curiosity got the best of me. Emily had fallen asleep on the couch after one of her late-night meetings. Her phone was on the coffee table, screen lighting up every few minutes with notifications. My hands were shaking when I picked it up, but I had to know. It was locked, of course, but luck was on my side. She hadn't changed her passcode. What I saw, my chest tightened as I scrolled through messages with a contact labeled Master Jonas. The texts were explicit. They talked about their special sessions, devotion ceremonies, and, worst of all, there were pictures. Intimate pictures. Emily, in lingerie I'd never even seen before, kneeling before a man who looked like a knockoff version of Brad Pitt. It didn't stop there. She was telling him things she never told me. How he made her feel alive, how their connection was pure, and how James doesn't get it. I dropped the phone like it was on fire and stumbled to the bathroom. My hands were clammy, my stomach twisted in knots. This wasn't just cheating. This was something worse. Some kind of twisted, polygamous affair. When I finally calmed down, I did the one thing I promised myself I'd never do. I grabbed my laptop and started digging. A few searches for Unity Circle polygamy led me to articles about cult-like communities, many centered around a charismatic leader. Master Jonas. This wasn't just adultery. Emily had joined a damn cult. I sat on the couch for hours, staring at nothing but feeling everything. Anger, confusion, betrayal. I could hear Emily's steady breathing from the couch, blissfully unaware of the storm about to hit her. For a moment, I considered letting it go, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But no, this wasn't just cheating. This was a whole other level of deceit. The next morning, I waited until she was in the kitchen pouring coffee. "Who's Jonas?" I asked casually, leaning against the counter. Her hand froze mid-pour, the coffee overflowing onto the counter. "Who?" she said, voice tight. A bad liar's reflex, play dumb. "Jonas. Master Jonas," I said, my voice sharper now. I crossed my arms and glared at her. I saw the texts, Emily, the pictures, all of it. Her face turned pale, then red, and then pale again. For a split second, she looked like a deer in headlights. Then she straightened up, her mouth twisting into that defiant smirk she always gave when backed into a corner. "You went through my phone? That's a total invasion of privacy, James." "Oh, so I'm the bad guy now? Privacy?" I exploded. "You're sneaking around with some cult leader, sending him pictures, talking about devotion ceremonies, and you want to talk about privacy? Are you kidding me right now?" "It's not what you think," she said quickly, her voice desperate now. "Jonas is a spiritual guide. He's helping me grow as a person. Helping us, actually. I was going to invite you to join." "Join?" I slammed my hand on the counter. "You think I'm going to sign up for your little polygamous cult? Are you out of your mind? You're sleeping with this guy, Emily. Cheating. Don't stand there and try to rebrand it as spiritual growth." Her eyes narrowed, and suddenly, The desperation was gone, replaced with that cold, manipulative edge I'd seen glimpses of before. You don't understand anything, James. He's not just some guy. He's enlightened. You wouldn't get it because you're too closed-minded, too basic. Basic? I was half laughing, half screaming now. I'm basic because I expect my wife not to screw around with a self-proclaimed guru? Emily rolled her eyes, leaning back against the counter with her arms crossed. If you'd been more attentive, more supportive, maybe I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere for fulfillment. And there it was, the blame game. The classic cheater's playbook. I stood there, seething, every word she said pouring gasoline on the fire raging in my chest. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but instead, I just walked out the door. But not before I said the one thing I knew would rattle her. You're going to regret this, Emily. You've made your bed. Now lie in it. I didn't look back as I slammed the door behind me. I drove aimlessly for hours, the kind of driving where you barely see the road through the haze of anger and heartbreak. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly they ached, but it was the only thing keeping me from completely losing it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those messages, those pictures, her words, her lies. When I finally pulled into a quiet parking lot to gather myself, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. We need to talk. You're blowing this out of proportion. Blowing it out of proportion? The audacity. I wanted to hurl my phone into the trees, but instead, I started typing back. Then I stopped. What was the point? She'd just twist everything around again, make me feel like I was the one losing my mind. Instead, I called my sister, Chloe. She'd always been my sounding board, and she hated bullshit as much as I did. Hey, I said when she picked up. My voice cracked, and that was all it took for her to know something was wrong. James? What's going on? She asked. It's Emily, I said, the words tumbling out. She's been cheating on me. With some guy from her spiritual group. Chloe didn't say anything for a moment. Then, I knew it. I freaking knew it. I told you that Unity Circle crap was sketchy. Yeah, well, it's a lot worse than sketchy. She's calling this guy her master. They've got some weird cult thing going on, and she's trying to spin it like it's my fault. My voice cracked again, and I hated myself for sounding so broken. Wait, master? Oh, hell no, Chloe said. You need to get out of there, James. Like now. I don't even know where to start, Chloe. She's still in the house. What am I supposed to do? Go home and play happy husband while she's off playing dress-up in her little polygamy circus? Listen to me, Chloe said, her voice suddenly sharp. You're not going back there. Pack a bag and come stay with me until you figure this out. Seriously. Don't let her gaslight you into thinking this is normal. It's not. I agreed, but as I hung up, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Emily. It was an unknown number. Curious, I answered. Hello? Is this James? A woman's voice asked, trembling. Yeah, who's this? My name's Lindsay, she said, her voice shaky but firm. I'm Jonas's wife. What the hell? I gripped the phone tighter. What do you want? I said, my voice low, like the anger was about to explode out of me. I need to warn you, Lindsay said, her words rushing out. About Jonas. About Emily. This isn't the first time he's done this. He preys on women, married women. He manipulates them into believing they're part of something special, but it's all lies. He ruins marriages, families, everything. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. You've been sitting back, watching him do this to people? I tried to stop him, she said, her voice cracking. But he's persuasive, dangerous. He's got people in that group who'll do anything for him. You need to be careful, James. He's not just some sleazy affair partner. He's worse. My head was spinning. Dangerous? Ruins families? This was so much bigger than I thought. Why should I believe you? I snapped, though part of me already did. Because I've been where you are, Lindsay said softly. And if you don't act fast, you're going to lose everything. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just about Emily's betrayal anymore. This was about survival. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, replaying Lindsay's words over and over in my head. I wanted to believe she was exaggerating, that Jonas was just some sleazy cult leader and nothing more. But deep down, I knew she was telling the truth. I could feel it in my gut. Emily wasn't just cheating. She'd been pulled into something dark and manipulative. And now I was caught in the crossfire. My phone buzzed again, startling me. Another message from Emily. Come home so we can talk. Please. I love you. Love me? The audacity made my blood boil. I shoved the phone into my pocket, started the car, and headed to my sister Chloe's house. I didn't have a plan, but I needed a buffer, someone who could help me think straight. When I got to Chloe's, she was waiting on the porch, arms crossed. You look like hell, she said, yanking me into a hug. Come inside. You're not going back there tonight. As I followed her into the kitchen, I told her about the call from Lindsay. Chloe listened, her face getting darker with every word. So, let me get this straight, she said when I finished. Emily's screwing some cult leader, and now his wife is warning you about him? And you're still considering going back there? I'm not considering anything. I snapped, though I wasn't sure that was entirely true. I don't know what to do. She's still my wife, Chloe. And this whole thing, it's not just an affair. It's something else. Exactly, Chloe said, slamming her hand on the counter. It's something else, and it's dangerous. You need to protect yourself, James. And if she won't leave, then you do. As much as I hated to admit it, she was right. But the thought of walking away, of giving up on everything we'd built, made my chest feel like it was caving in. The silence after Jonas left was deafening. Emily stood frozen on the porch, her tears streaking mascara down her face. I couldn't bring myself to look at her. Not because I didn't want to, because if I did, I might lose the fragile grip I had on my sanity. You need to leave, I said finally, my voice low but firm. James, she whispered, reaching for me, but I stepped back. Don't touch me, I snapped. You brought this into our lives, Emily. You brought him into our home. I didn't know it would get like this, she cried, her voice breaking. Jonas, he's not who I thought he was. No kidding, I shot back. You thought he was your enlightened savior, and instead, he's just another manipulative predator. And you let him destroy everything. She flinched like I'd slapped her, and for a split second, I felt a pang of guilt, but it was gone as quickly as it came. Pack a bag, I said, my tone ice cold. Go to a friend's house, a hotel, wherever. Just not here. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't care, I said simply, walking past her into the house. I locked the door behind me and leaned against it, my heart pounding. I could hear her muffled sobs on the other side, but I didn't move. After a few minutes, I heard her footsteps retreating and the sound of her car starting. Good. One problem down. But Jonas? He wasn't a problem that would just go away. The next morning, I met up with Chloe at her favorite diner. She didn't even let me sit down before she started in. You look like hell. Did she leave? She's gone for now, I said, sliding into the booth. But Jonas isn't. Wait, what? Chloe leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. What do you mean? He showed up at the house last night, I said, rubbing my temples, said I was a threat to the group, tried to play mind games. Chloe's eyes widened. James, you need to report this. That guy sounds unhinged. I thought about it, I said, but what's that going to do? He hasn't done anything illegal, yet, and even if he had, the cops aren't going to drop everything to deal with some glorified cult leader. Chloe sat back, her lips pursed. So, what's the plan? You're not just going to let him win, are you? I didn't answer right away. I stirred my coffee, watching the dark liquid swirl around the cup. Then I looked up at her. No, I'm not. Her eyebrows shot up. Okay, now I'm scared. What are you thinking? I leaned in, lowering my voice. Jonas is a manipulative bastard. He thrives on control, on people worshipping him. But what happens if the cracks start to show? What happens if his followers see the real Jonas? Chloe frowned. You're talking about exposing him? Exactly, I said, my voice steady now. He thinks he can waltz into my life and wreck it? Fine. Let's see how he likes it when the tables are turned. But how? Chloe asked, her tone cautious. If he's as dangerous as you say, this could backfire. Big time. I don't care, I said. I'll do whatever it takes. Dig up dirt. Talk to his wife again. Hell, hire a private investigator if I have to. I'm going to tear down his little empire, brick by brick. Chloe leaned back, her arms crossed. You're playing with fire, James. Maybe, I said, meeting her gaze. But I've already been burned. What's one more spark? By that evening, I was on the phone with Lindsay, Jonas's wife. She was hesitant at first, but once I explained my plan, she warmed up to the idea. You're not the first person to want revenge on him, she said. But be careful. He has people. People? I asked, my stomach twisting. Followers who will do anything for him, she said. If they think you're a threat, they'll come after you. I'll handle it, I said, though her words sent a chill down my spine. Just tell me what you know. And oh, did she deliver? Lindsay laid out everything. Jonas's past scams, his fake credentials, even rumors of financial fraud within the Unity Circle. She gave me names of former members who might be willing to talk and suggested I start with an ex-follower named Rachel. She was his right hand for years, Lindsay said, until she saw through him. By the time I hung up, I had a list of leads and a fire in my gut. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I was regaining control. Jonas had messed with the wrong guy, and I was going to make damn sure he regretted it. The next morning, I wasted no time. Armed with Lindsay's list, I started making calls. Most went straight to voicemail, but by mid-afternoon, I struck gold. Rachel, the ex-follower Lindsay had mentioned, agreed to meet me at a small cafe 2 towns over. Her voice was cautious but curious. If you're serious about taking Jonas down, she said, then I'm in. When I arrived, Rachel was already there, nervously stirring a cup of tea. She looked younger than I'd expected, mid-30s, with dark circles under her eyes that hinted at sleepless nights. James? She asked as I approached, her eyes scanning me like she was deciding if I was trustworthy. That's me, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. Thanks for meeting me. She nodded, glancing around. I don't usually talk about this, she said, her voice low. But if anyone deserves to see him fall, it's Jonas. That man. He's a monster. Tell me everything, I said, leaning in, and she did. Over the next hour, Rachel unraveled a tapestry of lies and manipulation that made my stomach churn. Jonas had built his so-called Unity Circle on a foundation of exploitation, preying on vulnerable women, draining their finances, and, in some cases, isolating them from their families. He used charm and intimidation in equal measure, keeping everyone under his thumb. He's smart, Rachel said, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. He knows how to cover his tracks, but he's not invincible. How do I get to him? I asked, my mind already racing. What's his weak spot? Rachel hesitated, her gaze dropping to her tea. His image, she said finally. Jonas thrives on being seen as untouchable, perfect. If you can prove he's a fraud, his followers will turn on him. But you'll need solid evidence, something they can't ignore. I nodded, my pulse quickening. Where do I start? She reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. This, she said, sliding it across the table. It's everything I managed to collect before I left. Emails, financial records, recordings of him, saying things he wouldn't want the group to hear. I stared at the tiny device, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and dread. Why didn't you use this before? I asked. I tried, Rachel said bitterly. But Jonas has lawyers, and his followers are fanatically loyal. They made my life hell when I tried to speak out. I had to disappear for a while. Not anymore, I said, pocketing the flash drive. I'm not afraid of him. That night, I went home, not to Emily, but to the house. She hadn't returned, which suited me just fine. I locked the doors, poured a stiff drink, and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. What I saw, it was worse than I imagined. Emails detailing financial scams, Jonas siphoning money from the group's charity efforts into personal accounts, voicemail recordings of him threatening ex-members, telling them they'd regret leaving the circle, and videos, grainy but clear, of Jonas in compromising situations with multiple women who looked terrified. I sat back, running my hands over my face. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about justice. Jonas wasn't just a cheating scumbag. He was dangerous, and I had the ammunition to take him down. But then, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You don't know what you're getting into. Stop now, or you'll regret it. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to respond. Too late. I'm already in. The reply came almost immediately. We're watching. I locked my phone and stood up, pacing the room. Jonas was trying to scare me, but it wasn't going to work. If he wanted to play games, fine. Two could play that game. I pulled out my own phone and called Chloe. I need your help, I said when she answered. With what? She asked warily. I'm going to expose Jonas, I said, my voice firm. But I can't do it alone. I need someone I can trust. James, this sounds dangerous, she said, but I could hear the resolve in her tone. What do you need? A distraction, I said, a plan already forming in my mind. I'm going to hit him where it hurts. The following night, we put the plan into action. Chloe and I showed up at one of Jonas's Unity Circle meetings, held in a rented event hall. Chloe went in first, blending in with the crowd. I waited outside, watching from the shadows. When Jonas took the stage, Chloe sent me a text. Go now. I slipped in through a side door, making my way to the small office Jonas used as his headquarters during meetings. It was locked, but I'd come prepared. A few minutes with a set of tools, and I was inside. The room was cluttered with papers, folders, and a laptop sitting on the desk. I didn't waste time. I plugged in a second flash drive and started copying everything I could find. Financial records, membership lists, even encrypted files I couldn't open. But then, I heard voices. Footsteps, coming closer. Panic surged through me. I yanked the flash drive from the laptop and slipped behind the desk just as the door opened. Jonas stepped in, followed by one of his lackeys, a tall, muscular guy who looked like he belonged in a biker gang. What's wrong? Jonas asked, his tone clipped. It's one of the guests, the lackey said. She's asking too many questions. Might be trouble. Deal with her, Jonas said, his voice cold. Quietly. My blood ran cold. Chloe. They were talking about Chloe. I had to act fast. I waited until Jonas's lackey left the room, then stood up, startling Jonas. Hello, Jonas, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. His eyes widened, then narrowed. James, he said smoothly, I didn't expect to see you here. Yeah, well, I said, holding up the flash drive. I thought I'd do some digging. You know, get to know the real you. His face darkened. You're making a mistake, he said, stepping toward me. No, I said, backing toward the door. You made the mistake when you messed with me. Now you're going to pay. Before he could respond, I slipped out the door and into the crowded hall, blending into the sea of followers. I found Chloe near the back and grabbed her arm. We're leaving, I said. What happened? She asked, her eyes wide. I'll explain later, I said, pulling her toward the exit. Right now, we need to get out of here. As we stepped into the night, I knew this wasn't over. Jonas would come after me, but I was ready. The game had just begun. Driving away from Jonas's event hall felt like a high-speed getaway, even though we weren't breaking any speed limits. Chloe sat in the passenger seat, her face pale and tight with worry. She hadn't said a word since we left, and neither had I. My knuckles were white as I gripped the wheel, my mind racing through everything that had just happened. Finally, Chloe broke the silence. James, she said, her voice trembling. What the hell did you just do? I got what I needed, I said, glancing at the flash drive sticking out of my jacket pocket. You mean the thing that's probably going to make Jonas come after you? She snapped, crossing her arms. This isn't just revenge anymore, James. This is dangerous. I know, I said through gritted teeth, but it's too late to back out now. Chloe let out a frustrated sigh, shaking her head. What's on that thing, anyway? I'm not sure yet, I admitted. But if it's anything like what Rachel gave me, it's enough to ruin him. And if it isn't, I'll find something else. This ends with Jonas. We pulled up to Chloe's house, the weight of the night pressing down on me like a storm cloud. She got out without a word, slamming the door behind her. I stayed in the car for a moment, staring out into the darkness. For the first time, doubt started to creep in. What if I couldn't take Jonas down? What if he really was untouchable? But then I remembered the smirk on his face when he told me I was a threat. The way he'd held Emily in his thrall. No, he wasn't untouchable. He was just another coward hiding behind lies and manipulation. The next morning, I woke up to a series of missed calls and messages on my phone. Most were from Emily, but one caught my attention. An unknown number. You've gone too far. Back off, or you'll regret it. I stared at the message, my chest tightening. Jonas was making his move. As I was debating whether to respond, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Chloe. You need to get over here, she said, her voice sharp. Now. What's wrong? I asked, already grabbing my keys. Your wife, Chloe said. She's here. I didn't wait for more details. 10 minutes later, I was pulling into Chloe's driveway, and there she was, Emily. She looked a mess, her hair tangled and her face blotchy from crying. But what struck me most was the fear in her eyes. What are you doing here? I asked, slamming the car door. Emily turned to me, tears streaming down her face. James, I didn't know who else to go to. Cut the crap, Emily, I said, crossing my arms. What do you want? It's Jonas, she said, her voice trembling. He's not going to let this go. He knows you took something from him, and he's furious. Let him come, I said, my jaw tightening. I'm not afraid of him. You should be, Emily said, stepping closer. James, you don't understand. He's not just some guy playing guru. He has connections. People who will do whatever he asks. You're in real danger. And whose fault is that? I snapped, the anger boiling over. You brought him into our lives, Emily. You betrayed me, and now you're here. What? Asking for help? Asking me to protect you? I didn't know it would get this bad, she cried, her voice breaking. I thought he was different. I thought he cared about me. Yeah, well, you thought wrong, I said coldly. Emily flinched, then took a deep breath. James, please, she said, her voice softer now. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But if we don't work together, Jonas is going to destroy both of us. For a long moment, I just stared at her. Part of me wanted to throw her out, to let her deal with the mess she'd made on her own. But another part, the part that still remembered the woman I fell in love with, knew she was right. Jonas was a threat to both of us, and if I didn't take him seriously, I could end up paying the price. Fine, I said finally. But this doesn't mean I forgive you. It just means I'm not letting that bastard win. Emily nodded, her eyes full of relief. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me, I said, turning away. Just stay out of my way. That night, as I sifted through the files from Jonas's laptop, I found it, the smoking gun. A series of emails detailing an illegal scheme Jonas was running, funneling money from the Unity Circle into offshore accounts. It was enough to ruin him, legally and financially. But then, something else caught my eye. A name. Emily. I opened the file, my heart pounding. It was a contract, an agreement between Jonas and Emily, stating that she would pledge her loyalty to the Unity Circle. At the bottom was her signature, dated months before I ever found out about the affair. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. This wasn't just about Jonas manipulating her. She'd willingly signed away her loyalty, to him, to the group, to something bigger than me. I slammed the laptop shut, my chest heaving. Emily wasn't just a victim. She was a part of this. And now, she was in my house. I stormed out of the room, my mind racing. Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a mug of tea Chloe must have given her. She looked up when I entered, her eyes wide with what I could only assume was guilt, or maybe fear. Why don't you tell me about the contract you signed with Jonas? I said, tossing the laptop onto the table. Her face went pale, and she visibly recoiled. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. Don't lie to me, Emily. I shouted, my voice echoing in the small kitchen. Chloe came to the doorway, her face full of alarm, but I waved her off. This was between Emily and me now. I saw it, I said, my voice shaking with anger. Your signature, your pledge of loyalty to Jonas and the Unity Circle. You didn't just fall for his manipulation, Emily. You signed up for it. You chose this. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't moved. Not this time. It wasn't like that, she whispered, shaking her head. You don't understand, James. He made me feel special, like I mattered, like I was part of something bigger than myself. You mattered? I barked, my anger boiling over. You were part of something? What about us, Emily? What about our marriage? Was that not big enough for you? It wasn't, she shouted back, standing up so suddenly her chair screeched against the floor. You think I wanted this? You think I planned it? I was drowning, James. You never noticed. You never cared. Don't you dare try to make this my fault, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I may not have been perfect, but I didn't cheat. I didn't sign my soul over to some lunatic cult leader. She looked at me for a long moment, then dropped her gaze. I didn't know what I was getting into, she said quietly. By the time I realized, it was too late. Too late? I scoffed. It's never too late to do the right thing, Emily. You could have walked away. You could have told me the truth. But you didn't. You doubled down. You betrayed me, us, for him. Her tears were falling freely now, but I didn't care. I'd spent enough time feeling sorry for her. I should throw you out right now, I said, my voice cold. But I won't. Not yet. Because as much as I hate you right now, I hate Jonas even more. And if taking him down means tolerating your presence for a little while longer, then so be it. Emily nodded, wiping her eyes. I'll do whatever it takes, she said softly, to make this right. You're damn right you will, I said, turning away from her. Later that night, after Emily had gone to bed in the guest room, Chloe and I sat in the living room, going over the files again. She hadn't said much since the confrontation, but I could feel her eyes on me as I scrolled through the documents. You okay? She asked finally. I laughed bitterly. Define okay. My wife's betrayal keeps getting worse. I've got a cult leader gunning for me, and I'm pretty sure I can't trust anyone in my life anymore. Chloe didn't laugh. James, you're doing the right thing, she said. But this is going to get messy. Are you ready for that? I don't have a choice, I said, leaning back on the couch. Jonas has to go. If I don't stop him, he'll keep hurting people. Emily, me, everyone he's sucked into his orbit. She nodded, but her expression was heavy. Just don't lose yourself in the process, okay? I didn't answer. I wasn't sure I could promise that. The next day, I got a call from Rachel. I heard you stirred the pot, she said, her voice both impressed and concerned. Let's just say Jonas knows I'm coming for him, I said. Good, she said, because I've got something that might help. Jonas has a private meeting tonight with a few of his inner circle. It's at his house. If you can get in, you might find something big. Are you serious? I asked. How do you even know this? I still have a few friends in the circle, she said. They don't know I'm helping you, but they trust me enough to share things. If you're willing to take the risk, this could be the opportunity you've been waiting for. I hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. Breaking into Jonas's house was more than just risky. It was reckless. But if she was right, it could also be the key to finally taking him down. I'll do it, I said. Rachel gave me the address and a time, then added, Be careful, James. Jonas doesn't play fair. If he catches you, he won't, I said, though my gut churned at the thought. That night, I parked a block away from Jonas's sprawling suburban mansion, my heart pounding in my chest. The house was lit up, and I could see figures moving inside. His so-called inner circle. I crept through the shadows, my mind racing. This was it, the make-or-break moment. If I pulled this off, I could destroy Jonas. If I didn't, well, I wasn't going to think about that. As I reached the side of the house, I noticed an open window on the second floor. Perfect. I climbed up quietly, slipping inside and landing in what looked like a home office. The desk was cluttered with papers, and I began rifling through them, my hands shaking. Financial records, membership lists, a handwritten journal. It was all here. But then, I heard voices. Check the upstairs, a deep voice said. Someone's here. My blood ran cold. I had to move. Fast. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let us know in the comments. I stared at Rachel as the sounds of footsteps and breaking branches grew louder outside the cabin. My mind was racing. Jonas's men had surrounded us, and there was nowhere to run. This wasn't how things were supposed to end. Stay low, I whispered to Rachel, motioning toward the back door. We crept through the small kitchen, my heart pounding as I scanned for anything that could be used as a weapon. A heavy cast-iron skillet sat on the stove, and I grabbed it, clutching it tightly. The front door burst open with a deafening crash, and Jonas's voice rang out. James, I know you're in here. Why don't you come out and save us all some time? Rachel looked at me, her face pale. What do we do? Stay quiet, I whispered. If we can get to the tree line, we'll have a chance. But as I turned to lead her toward the back door, I felt something cold and metallic press against my side. Sorry, James, Rachel said, her voice trembling, but you're not the only one who wants him gone. I froze, disbelief washing over me as she stepped back, a gun now pointed at my chest. What the hell are you doing? I hissed. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, she said, her eyes glinting with a mix of fear and determination. Jonas destroyed my life, too, but if I bring you to him, maybe I can finally make it right. Rachel, I said, my voice low, think about what you're doing. He's not going to forgive you. He'll kill both of us the moment he gets what he wants. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, but then the door to the cabin swung open, and Jonas stepped inside, flanked by two of his men. Well, Jonas said, clapping slowly. Rachel, I have to admit, I didn't expect this level of initiative from you. Color me impressed. You said if I delivered him, you'd let me go, Rachel said, her voice shaking. Did I? Jonas said with a smirk. That doesn't sound like me. Don't listen to him, Rachel, I said, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at my chest. He's lying. He always lies. Shut up, she shouted, the gun shaking in her hand. Jonas took a step closer, his smile widening. Rachel, my dear, you've outlived your usefulness. But don't worry, I'll make this quick. Before Rachel could react, one of Jonas's men lunged forward, knocking the gun from her hand and shoving her to the ground. She screamed, but Jonas held up a hand, silencing her. As for you, Jonas said, turning his attention to me, you've been a thorn in my side for far too long. You're finished, Jonas, I said, staring him down. The evidence is already out there. The police are coming. It's over. Jonas laughed, a low, chilling sound. You think a few leaked files are going to stop me? My reach goes further than you can imagine, James. By the time anyone figures out what's happening, you'll be long gone. He motioned to his men, who stepped forward, their guns trained on me. But before they could act, the sound of sirens pierced the air, growing louder with each passing second. Jonas's smug expression faltered. No, he muttered. Not now. I saw my chance and didn't hesitate. Gripping the cast-iron skillet, I swung it with all my strength, connecting with the side of Jonas's head. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Run, I shouted to Rachel, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the back door. We burst into the woods as chaos erupted behind us. Jonas's men were shouting, the sound of gunfire echoing through the night as police stormed the cabin. Hours later, I sat in the back of an ambulance, a blanket draped over my shoulders. Rachel was being questioned by the police nearby, her face pale but composed. Jonas had been arrested, his organization dismantled in one fell swoop. The evidence we'd collected was enough to ensure he'd spend the rest of his life behind bars. But as I sat there, trying to process everything, I felt a strange sense of emptiness. The battle was over, but the scars it had left behind were deeper than I'd realized. Emily approached hesitantly, her face etched with guilt. James, she said softly, I saw what happened. Are you okay? I looked at her, the woman I had once loved more than anything, the woman who had betrayed me in ways I never thought possible. I don't know, I said honestly. She nodded, tears filling her eyes. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but Emily, I interrupted, my voice steady. This isn't about forgiveness anymore. It's about moving on. Her shoulders sagged, and she wiped at her eyes. I understand. I watched as she walked away, disappearing into the growing crowd of onlookers. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of closure. As the sun began to rise, I turned my face toward it, letting its warmth wash over me. Jonas was defeated. Emily was out of my life, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I was free. The unexpected twist? Despite everything, I didn't feel victorious, just relieved. Sometimes, survival is the only win you need. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Let us know in the comments.